Recorded January 31st, 2024. Good afternoon, Andrea. Good afternoon, Rod. Good afternoon, bro. Well, anyway, good afternoon, you two. Where's Brody? He's a slacker.
He's
See,
doing the
Brody
James
sucks.
Bond skiing thing again.
Yeah.
I warned both of you when we went to this unlimited time off, he was going to abuse it. I knew he was. He was going to abuse this unlimited time off.
I mean,
Right.
you might as well, if you live somewhere cold, you might as well spend some time enjoying it. And he's enjoying all of his skiing, hella skiing, snowboarding, whatever it is that he does. So
Andrew, can you ski?
I went one time when I was a teenager, being a Floridian, certainly not on snow, right? I went one time when I was 13. I fell down so many times that I never wanted to go again. So.
Oddly enough, I have skied. I can stand up on skis. I cannot ski. I can snowboard my butt off. I don't know how that translates. The falls are easier on the snowboard to me because contrary to popular belief, snow hurts. It burns when you fall, like cold sand. Yeah. Hey, I'm on my company laptop because I'm like, why does it look so different? I can't see anything, and I'm not logged in. But Andrew, tell me something good.
I don't know if I have anything good. I've had a frustrating day. I got a package yesterday and I opened it downstairs here in my office and I kept saying to myself, take this thing upstairs and put it in your bedroom. Take this thing upstairs and put it in your bedroom. And now I cannot find for the life of me what I did with the thing. So I've been spending the last hour tearing. I'm like, I looked in the garbage. I looked in the refrigerator. I'm like, clearly I put it somewhere, but I have no idea where.
There is a proven, scientific theory of quantum entanglement that has not ever been disproven. You will find it in the last place you look. It'll be there. But what about?
I want to meet the person that goes on and continues looking after they find it. That's the person.
That would probably be me. Yeah. So frustrating, personal, but anything good at work? Bad at work?
Oh, I mean, getting ready. I'm heading out to Seattle next week. I told you. Also excited to see you in person, Edward Walton. Meet my new team, learn more about Copilot for security. So excited about all of that for sure. I have a friend coming in town. This is personal. A friend coming town this weekend. So excited to see one of my friends from grad school. So lots of good stuff going on.
Yeah. I'm happen to be in the office today, and they're doing a breakout session around a bunch of topics for the health and life sciences group here at Microsoft, and there's a lot of people in the office. I mean, somebody has money because there's a gazillion people. Your name came up several times, and everybody's gonna be happy to see you out in rep. I'm like, oh, she's gonna be there. I'm like, yeah. So Tony Sims told me to give you a hug. There you go. He was here, and a few others are gonna be out there. So you'll get to see a lot of your comrades. For me, sort of like studying for some certification stuff. Actually, start trying to write out a show outline because I know that the people have demanded that we do a show or two on certifications, right? And I think Andrew, you had 2 pivots, right? People's personal journeys and the value of certain certs. I believe those are the prevailing topics. So at least Henrik has talked about it. Andre wants to get on. Trevor Smith, who's listened to the show, shout out Trevor and the rest of the team. He wants to participate. So I think that we just need to figure out the month that we're going to do it, because we know that next month is going to be women in cyber, right?
Well,
so we're trying to line up guests.
We have 1 day left before next month.
Yeah.
Is that February yet? Oh yeah. Exactly. Well, to me, today is New Year's Eve because my first of the year starts February 1st, and it's been that way since I don't celebrate.
Does that mean your New Year's resolutions are officially over?
I don't do those things.
That's what. Yeah, I know.
Yeah, I don't do resolutions. I do revolutions. Not resolution. No, it's just a thing that I started doing years ago. Is all the people in the gym takes about a month before their resolve breaks. Then I can get back. Right. Thanks, Trevor Smith, for getting me that information on how to get the VMware licenses to get all my lab environment updated. So I did do it. You can share it in the notes. VMware or Broadcom has a way that you can buy their vCenter and workstation licenses, and they it's highly discounted and legal license. You buy them from VM. and I bought them. So I got my vCenter upgraded from some archaic 6.7 to whatever 7 that is, and then and I got a copy or a licensed copy of 17, which I needed to be able to run all the VMs for the SANS course I'm taking. So thanks, Trevor Smith, for that. It was pretty painless. Throw a credit card in, $200, get a vCenter license, and then you get a workstation license. So I'm good on that. So I've been working on that stuff. And I turned my EqualLogic SAN back on, and instantly I didn't have to heat the house anymore. So I turned the heat off because it's heating the house and making noise. So that's all I've. And Rod, last but not least, or least but not last, what have you been doing?
I don't do anything. Speaking of VMware, did you see the news today? Was it today or yesterday or just recently? Broadcom lost a huge VMware customer in Dell.
Oh,
Dell
yeah.
sold VMware, and then so I don't know about VMware these days. People are, and in fact, I have periodically people reach out to me a number of different means and ways. And they want to know how to get a job at Microsoft, and they want to talk about it. And so I mentor folks, not just Microsoft, but also external to Microsoft. There's been a slew of people come from that VMware acquisition. It's like, I just don't want to work here anymore.
Interesting.
I think I mentioned it on the show, maybe in the backside, whereas I was on the plane, and we'll talk about offline that when that first announcement about the Broadcom thing and a few other things coming across, and the guy, you could tell he works at VMware, because I'm being nosy, looking over his shoulder, waiting in line on the plane to get to the restroom, and he slams his laptop shut. I mean, he startled the people next to him. So whatever news he got, he wasn't happy with. I'm like, ooh. VMware is one of those companies that the heyday made them take on a bunch of hubris that they were invincible. BlackBerry. Okay.
Oh yeah. Yeah.
And when the documentary comes out, you'll probably hear that they probably had a chance to probably be one of the cloud people, where it would have been, Azure, Google, AWS, VMware. But VMware was more concerned in going into data centers and just being your hypervisor and other data centers managed by Rackspace and all these places. They missed out on an opportunity to do it. They didn't see the future. Right. And then they got into these crazy agreements with Dell and Cisco building their little boxes, and then with HP building their little boxes. Think about it. Everybody's touched VMware, right? Andrew, you touched VMware. Everybody's done that. And to see them contract the way that they're going, I don't think enough pieces to buy off. What do they have that you want to buy?
Well, and that really speaks in respect to vision, right? They just kind of rested on their laurels. There's a lot of companies that do that, and that's just super sad. It's a leadership issue.
And if you look at how many patents and the mind share that they have, remember how close they were to the hardware. So a lot of hardware innovations were by virtue of making it so that the hypervisor would run. Right, the way CPUs, you have to go in and enable certain aspects of your firmware so they could run the hypervisor, where applications, and do all this stuff. And think about the innovation that they did, as well as Microsoft with Hyper-V, or how the network stack was affected by virtualization. They were thought leaders on all this stuff, right? So enough on them. And somebody says my YouTube, but yeah, silence is what they're called now. Not RIM, not anything. They're silent. So, well, that wraps it up.
Yeah.
We have guests today.
Really? We have guests today. And who are these guests? Do we know?
We don't. We sort of left the door open, and they showed up.
Oh my goodness.
Hey. And so one of our guests is a prior guest who's returned, and that person has tricked her, counterpart and Pierre to come on the show too. So would you two like to introduce yourself as well as the topic for today?
Yeah,
I would love to.
Mecca, I'll let you go first, since just because your face isn't there.
My face is not here because I am currently driving in a car to a customer. So it's a little tricky. No one wants to see the bottom half of my body, and that's it when I'm sitting there in a car. But my name's Andrew McMurray, but everyone calls me Macca because I'm Australian and I've got a Mac in my surname. So everyone becomes Macca. And coincidentally, we call McDonald's Macca's over here, so it's really good to be named after a hamburger. But I'm part of the Purview engineering team, M365 Purview, looking after MIP and DLP at Microsoft. And here to talk about Purview. I'm looking forward to it.
Mecca. So when you say a car, I say he's either from Australia or Boston.
A car, mate. I've got a car.
Macaque. So I thought it was the IE that went on the end of everything, because when I was there, it was you were either a truckie or a postie or something like that.
Oh, there's a lot of things, but A at the end of stuff, like if your name's Sharon, you're a Shazza. If you've got a Mac in your name, you're a Macca. It's just let's face it, we're a penal colony and we can't talk properly, so let's just get it out there.
So apparently, Andrea, that is an Australian name. Who knew?
Andrea? No, it's not.
Yeah. So thank you, Mecca, Andrew, Mecca, and the next guest who's been on the show previously. And I remember the episode we were talking all day MCAS at the time.
Yeah.
My favorite product. I'm going back to that. So reintroduce yourself to our new listeners who may not have been on the show when you came on almost a year and a half ago.
Yeah, of course. So the funny thing is, I actually swapped over from the now known as Defender for Cloud Apps team over to Macca's team, working on MIP and DLP. So I am on Macca's team. I do a lot of the work with training, with kind of going forward with features and different customers. But like the main topic that we're here for today is technically, hey, good evening, is technically for Purview overall, right? So there's going to be a lot of things there that I think Mac and I are very excited to bring to you guys, but also just everything gets touched by all the different product sets that we have, right? So very excited to be here today, and I can't believe it's been a year and a half since I last joined this overall podcast or show. Actually, is it a show or is it a podcast? What would you guys call it?
It's
show,
an experience.
Right?
It's an
experience. Okay, I like that. So it's been a bit of a time, but happy to be back, and I think I have maybe 1 or 2 extra lines now on my face from 18 months ago. So hoping that the next time it's not another 18 months, but very excited to be here today. So
yeah. So thank you for coming on. The reason I invited you to, I had the privilege of being on one of your community webinars, and I'm like, hey, we got to get them to come talk about all things Purview, and I think when I was on the partner side, I did a lot of work on the AIP side, and when Andrew and I on the same team, so I did MCAS, and I should tell people MCAS and AIP were like cousins, because MCAS would tell on AIP all the time and stuff like that. So that webinar was excellent, and I wanted our listeners to understand, hey, what's the hotness with Purview? What is the thing that people go, we got to use this product. We're already buying the premium E5 SKU or the security SKU, and Purview is there. So I wanted to have you on to come talk about what was relevant in Purview that listeners should be aware of, especially if they already have the enablement and all the coolness in it. Yeah. And I'll leave that to Mecca, because he's chomping at the bit to tell us.
Oh, I know.
Really
you went
cool,
off of me. You could hear him. So Mac, I'm gonna let you take over
you can know it's coming. You know it's coming straight away. All right. Well, I'm going to talk until I end up in a bad area and then just disappear in that sing-song method that happens when you lose connectivity. But I think probably one of the big things I think that's hot at the moment in endpoint DLP specifically, obviously endpoint DLP came out some time ago, and we've had some really good responses to that, and a lot of customers are working with it. But I think one of the big things that's hot around endpoint DLP at the moment is the new just-in-time feature that we've brought out. And sort of to contextualize just-in-time, one of the things that you really need to be aware of is how endpoint DLP does its classification of data. And this trips up a lot of people, because a lot of people, when they're doing their initial testing of endpoint DLP, suddenly find that endpoint DLP doesn't stop some of their files going to USB, and they wonder what's going on. And it's really important to know that endpoint DLP doesn't actually look at what's inside a file unless it's a file creation action or a file edit action. And what happens is when people bring their machines into endpoint DLP, they generally have a lot of historical files sitting on the hard drive. And none of those historical files, if they haven't been opened and edited, are actually being scanned by endpoint DLP to see what's in them. So what happens is they do some testing, they create a brand new file, they put a credit card number in it, they try to put it into USB, and of course what's happened is it's now been scanned. And Endpoint DLP says, I'm not going to let you do that. And then they say, that's cool. And then they go to one of their other historical files with a credit card number in it, try and put it onto USB, and Endpoint DLP says, yeah, no worries, not a problem. I haven't looked at that, I don't care. Straight onto USB. And I think
he's putting so much knowledge into the ether that
Yeah.
there's not enough
It's a problem.
bandwidth for all the knowledge.
Somebody's getting it. I'm sure, like the moon,
So,
one of those Chinese
just-
rockets.
Oh,
yeah.
there you go. You're back.
time is a new feature.
Oh, nope, you're not back.
I'm back.
This-
And where did you lose me?
Oh, there you are.
Sarahzin, I'll let you take over the rest of that.
part-
My memory is not the greatest. So you said just in time, the new feature, and then blah.
Okay.
So let's
Can you
assume
hear
that
me
we
now?
pressed rewind, but yeah, we
Yes,
can hear you now.
Yeah.
Excellent. All right. So I just started talking about what just in time does. So just in time is a new feature that allows us to stop any action happening on a file that we haven't scanned while we go ahead and scan it, make sure it's okay, and then let it go. So the example I gave you before, where we had a historic file that hadn't been scanned with a credit card number in it, just in time will catch that attempt to move that historic file to a USB, pop up a toast notification to say, just chill, I'm looking at this and I'm looking at what's in it now, I'm doing the scan for you. And then if it finds something that shouldn't be there, blocks it. If it doesn't, it's now been scanned, it's going to know for next time and let it into the USB in this case, or wherever it is we might be putting it. So that solves that entire problem of those historic files that traditionally wouldn't be caught by Endpoint DLP until they'd been opened and edited and resaved. So that is one of my favorite features right now. And you turn it on for the entire tenant. You can turn it on for everybody in the tenant, or you can turn it on for just individual groups if you want to. And you can even set default behavior. So if the machine's not connected to the internet, you can choose to just block anything we don't know about, or you can choose to allow things out that we don't know about, depending on your situation. So that's one of my favorite features right now. And that's my number one feature right now that you should check out if you're doing Endpoint DLP. And if you decided not to go near Endpoint DLP because of exactly that issue, it's time to reconsider and start evaluating again.
So a piece of that, and just to clarify, because I'm trying to get this in my brain, because been delivering sessions for this Microsoft AI tour, and I'm sorry, every time I talk, the letters AI come out of my mouth. I apologize for that. But we tell customers there about Purview for data governance and all this stuff. So this just in time, it works with the existing monitored files, or will it work with all files? Because that was one of the questions that I regularly get. If I turn this on, how long does it take for this scan to complete before I can start using it for my entire tenant is covered? Does that make sense?
Yeah, great question. And I think there's a nuance to be aware of here. So that concept of turning something on and then waiting for an entire tenant to be crawled, that's not just in time. Just in time is a feature that's only in effect on the endpoint, and it's for files that are traversing the endpoint that have never been scanned. The feature you're talking about, where we go ahead, we turn on the feature, and then we go right through your tenant, through Exchange, through OneDrive, through SharePoint, and we look at every single file in there, and we test every single file to see what's in it. We call that cold data crawl. And cold data crawl is actually currently in private preview, I believe. And Sarahzin, jump in and tell me if I'm being an idiot and it's a bit further along. But that is a feature that we'll be bringing out later this year. And it will do exactly what you were talking about then. Cold data crawl is all about going back through all the historical files in the tenant rather than doing it on the endpoint. Although we will include the endpoint in cold data crawl as well, which will be a really nice adjunct to just in time, because it will essentially fix all of that. And if you are interested in getting in on that preview and you're a customer that wants to try it out for cold data crawl, do join our customer connection program that we have available, which is where we post all of our private previews. We'll stick a link up in the chat, but it's https://aka.ms/join CCP. Really good thing to look at there. And in actual fact, I think cold data crawl is going to be massive because it does solve that historical problem with tenants that we traditionally try to get around in something like SharePoint by turning on sensitive by default and waiting for indexing to occur on files that were actually being actively used and become hot at any one particular point in time. You're not going to be reliant on that anymore. And I think that's going to be really important.
So just in time kind of be like a stopgap because it does work on the endpoint until that kind of cold data crawl is available. So this is kind of like a stopgap measure to ensure that those files aren't exfiltrated or sent somewhere else that they shouldn't be.
So long as the file traverses the endpoint, yes. If the file doesn't traverse the endpoint, like for instance, I'm in SharePoint and just executing a share charm from there, then not necessarily.
Okay.
So let me ask a question related. You're talking about basically the SaaS offerings that we have. Is this a start of a depreciation of AIP scanner? How do you consider things that reside on the on-premise? Because it sounds like when I used to deploy AIP, one of the things we used to scan non-SaaS was to put an AIP scanner and then scan across. Am I out of the picture, or is AIP scanner being replaced with this, or this is just a supplement to it?
No, absolutely not. We're not replacing AIP Scanner. What we're actually going to be doing fairly soon is rebranding it into MIP Scanner, as we love to do. So the marketing folks are going to do that. But AIP Scanner definitely does not go away. That cold data crawl feature that we're talking about is initially in any way associated with the online services and with the endpoint. But AIP Scanner for hitting up your NAS shares and your
from repositories.
Yeah. Okay. It makes sense. And for our
available.
And for our listeners, we're killing you with acronyms. AIP, Azure Information Protection Scanner, MIP, Microsoft Information Protection, and what was the other IP that we had? MIP, AIP, and it was something else. But just want to make sure we get some context of acronyms. We're throwing them all over around, and we put JIT, which is just in time. But thank you for that. I did not know about that feature coming out. That sounds pretty cool. I know that. I'm sorry, Andrew, you had a question? Oh, I thought you raised your hand.
I 100% did not.
Okay.
When it comes to compliance and DLP, I'm just like, I just have.
So we have an audience question. How does this complement the auto labeling feature?
Anyone can answer.
Yeah, it's a really good question. Assuming I can be heard.
Yep. Yes, we can hear you.
Excellent. Okay. So auto labeling is all about detecting the data inside a document, labeling that information, and potentially encrypting it as well as a protection routine. How does this complement that? Okay, so essentially the just-in-time feature and the cold data crawl feature will allow us to find information inside files for the purposes of applying a DLP policy to them. Obviously, DLP policies can contain sensitivity labels as a condition, and auto labeling helps us to automatically label those files when we find the information inside them for those conditions to be taken into effect. But if we have a file that's not labeled and is not being caught by DLP through a labeling condition, then just-in-time and cold data crawl will allow us to find the sensitive information inside the document and then apply any DLP policies which are using SITs, sensitive information types, as a condition rather than sensitivity labels or in addition to sensitivity labels to those files. So think of them as complementary to each other, adding on benefits there. And when we look at the way our customers do DLP, almost 100% of our customers will use a combination of things like sensitive information types, sensitivity labels, named entities, exact data match types of detection methodologies to make the decision as to what to do. It's very unusual for a customer to just use sensitivity labeling as a method of detecting and making actions against data going out of the enterprise. So it becomes just part of that holistic way of actually detecting the information and acting on the information that we found in a file.
Yeah, but then Maca, to add onto that with different things that some of our customers use too, something that we also released around the same time that we announced the GIT capabilities was the ability to use document size within our endpoint DLP configurations with the predicates. So if your document is greater than a specific size or equal to a specific size, that could also be something that's detected and blocked at that endpoint too. So they're just adding on different predicates here, and that's one of the things that was highly requested too, because we had that in our email DLP capabilities, and they wanted to make sure that we could also put that capability within our endpoint as well. I missed the question that just popped up on the screen there.
Oh, it was just a confirmation. I thought it was a good confirmation. The individual that asked it earlier, I think they got confirmation of what that actually does. So yeah.
So let me ask another question. With the enhancements of the way scanning documents, sensitivity, and types, does this extend out to non-Microsoft centric collaboration file types? And what about the OCR improvements, being able to see sensitive information type or collateral inside
QR
images?
codes. Yeah.
Yep. So the first part you're asking if it extends to non-Microsoft apps, or did I mishear that?
File types. Let's just say a PDF. That seems to be the most prevalent outside of Word and Excel. A PDF app. What this thing?
Yeah.
What?
Yeah. So PDF is supported. Do you mean more so about PDFs with? I'm just trying to get this scenario for the DLP overall, or do you mean auto labeling?
Well, the just-in-time and the cold data crawl. If it's crawling the data, so the question is sort of embedded. You answer the first one, are PDFs supported? Yes. But what about sensitive information that may be in a PDF, such as a graphic that may have a SSN in it or a number? Or can it see graphical information and still do it?
Gotcha. So for the OCR side, in order to ensure that's actually going into existing DLP policies, so we did release that end of last year. You have to go into your settings and turn on the OCR capabilities and choose the specific locations where you want it to be turned on, and it'll automatically then be included within your existing DLP policies that have those locations already in place. The only caveat to that is that it really depends on some of the pricing that's there, because there's a little bit of debate going back and forth with how to price the number of images that are being scanned in your environment. So assuming that we're in a perfect world, right, where that's not an issue, which I know is not an issue for most of our, is an issue for most of our customers, but just to answer this, on the OCR side, you just have to enable it within the settings, and it'll automatically flow into those locations that are already existing in your DLP policies.
So this sounds like, once again, the word not being said is AI in some form or fashion. Okay, somebody asked the question in the thing. I think it was there you go. He just put it in there. Would this new data crawl feature be tied to, I dare say, Copilot?
Well, let's just say all roads eventually lead to Copilot at some point in time. Will that cold data crawl capability lead into Copilot? Depends on how you look at it. If we were to talk about some of the announcements we made recently around the Purview capabilities that are coming into Security Copilot, then really it comes down to what actions were taken against that particular file, and how can I then get more information about that for a member of the SOC team. So perhaps cold data crawl has found something in a file. That file has been blocked from being shared, and we've raised an alert to indicate that some potentially nefarious behavior has been attempted. What's really important about the Purview capabilities in Copilot is we'll be looking at all of those signals coming from MIP, DLP, insider risk management, communication compliance, and e-discovery to be able to then, through natural language, obviously, ask Copilot to look at things like, what are the most important alerts that I need to look at today, and then drill a little bit deeper into it. Okay, this particular user attempted to share this particular file. Go give me more information about that file, about all of the files that user has interacted with in the last 7 days. Drill into them to tell me what type of sensitive data would potentially be affected by this, and also give me a bit of a a chain of activities as to what's happened around that, not just from within Purview, but potentially also coming from Microsoft Defender for X, such as Microsoft Defender for Endpoint. So I think that as we go along and as we get more mature with our AI solutions, obviously we're going to be grabbing a lot more information as to what's been signaled from us or to us through the different services. And those people out there right now that have Security Copilot as an early adopter, if you're part of the early access program, or EAP, if you want to use the three-letter acronyms that we're so fond of using, have the opportunity now to get into a preview program on the Purview capabilities in Security Copilot to start looking at some of that stuff. And if you are interested in getting onto that private preview and you are a member of the early access program, then do get in touch with your Microsoft account team, and they can get you some more information on potentially working with us to help shape that product as we go.
I have actually met 2 EAP participants in real life in the past 3 weeks. I thought, who does that, right? I'm just the luckiest guy in the world.
To be able to meet in person in general, I think that's cool. And the fact they're part of EAP, that makes it even better.
Yeah, right? So you actually see people in public, and then they actually happen to be part of the early adopter program for Copilot for security.
So how do you know this, Rod? Do you quiz every single person that you meet?
So the sessions that I give, I talk about obviously Copilot for security quite a bit, and then they come up afterwards and say, "Hey, I'm an early adopter." We'll talk about that at some point. There's some discussions around that.
Okay. So it seems that JIT and the cold storage crawl, we got to come up with a better marketing name, right? CSC, right?
Oh, they're on it. They're probably also planning on changing the names because names change all the time for everything that we have. So
Sarahzin, am I saying it correctly?
Sarahzin, yep.
Okay. Now we've heard Macca's, fanboy of his particular feature and stuff. What about you? Are you guys on the same page? What about another cool feature? You're like, well, that's cool, but let me tell you about this.
It's really hard to match that level of enthusiasm for JIT because it's Maca really just nailed it there, right? And for me, with all the different features we have, because my main thing is I'm with all these different customers and they're always not complaining, that's wrong term. They're always wanting to improve the product, right? Because let's be real, it's for them, right? And they want to be able to use it in a way we could always make a product the way it is in a specific perfect world, right? And not be able to know exactly what it is that overall goes on. And so the one thing that I guess I could say that I'm pretty excited about is I'm just going to go back, and I know that we're supposed to kind of stray away from kind of going into the details, but some of the things I am able to see is on the Copilot side is really for the amount of work that we've gone through and we've done with actually doing some of the summarization that's coming out that we announced for a public preview overall with some of the different capabilities that we have. And the reason I'm so excited for is because myself, Mac, and the team, we were all kind of part of that process behind the scenes of the customers that were involved with the work that actually wanted to release that, and to see it come out. And I know I'm not matching the same level of enthusiasm, and that's also because we're kind of restricted on what we can say, right? It's something that is absolutely fantastic because there's so many customers that were involved. We had so many discussions. We went back and forth. They tested so much just to get that first edition of Microsoft Security or Microsoft Copilot for Microsoft Purview out. And that's where I'm honestly the most excited about, and really working on it now, even with some of the prior preview customers that are coming in to further improve that. Being able to ask these questions to the system and in your natural language and getting it coming back out and helping to minimize the amount of time that you're spending investigating. We have customers who are getting several hundred thousand alerts a day, and that summary that's coming out is just to see it actually alleviate some of that alert fatigue with some of those summaries is what I'm very excited about, because alert fatigue is what I think the number one issue with most of our customers too when they're creating these policies. So that's where I would say I'm very excited.
So Microsoft likes to tout is integration prowess. What is the enforcement mechanism for the two features, JIT and CSC? Is it MDE or is it MCAS? Or is it Intune with some type of Intune policy like a ASR? So how do you enforce that? Who's going to say, if you have an enforcement mechanism, who's going to say don't do that or notify? I know that endpoint DLP is part of MIP, but does MCAS or either Intune or does MDE? Who's going to be the person that's going to lay down the law?
So the way the Defender for Endpoint DLP works is on Defender for Endpoint most of the time, right? You can also do basic script to get your device onboarded. If you have those devices that are running on the Defender for Endpoint functionality, that's what's going to be coming into place. The Intune is one of the most common ways of having the integration between Defender for Endpoint and Intune turned on. And of course, Defender for Cloud Apps already works on those. So I want to say that it depends. And the reason I say that it depends is it depends on the organization as to where they are doing most of their device control and device onboarding overall. Defender for Cloud Apps, I think, builds onto those two, right? Because you have the device management being done with Intune, and then of course the endpoint DLP functioning on top of the Defender for Endpoint functionality at that point. So it kind of comes back down to which integrations are turned on. But I would say for a lot of our customers, the Defender for Endpoint is where that integration is turned on, and it feeds into all the other products and also pulls in at the same time to go into what would be Defender 365.
And this is not a onerous question. One last question is, and only because someone brought this up about the way certain products work. What is the parity across Macs? I'm not going to talk about Linux, because if you use Linux as your desktop operating system, you're a different type of person. You're a different type of person, and I don't want to be your friend. But what about Macintosh?
But of course, you always want to be friends with a Macintosh person, right?
Oh yeah, absolutely.
Yeah,
They have
absolutely.
they have discretionary and disposable income most of the time.
So with the Mac OS side of things, if you don't mind me jumping in there, Sarahzin,
You're good.
the way we look at the engineering work when we're doing endpoint DLP is Windows is always our first release for those features, and Mac OS is done after we've validated those features effectively with Windows. So unfortunately for Mac OS users, you will always see a slight disparity in feature sets between Windows and Mac.
Maka, you're cutting off there.
See Windows features here. Did I lose everyone?
Yeah, we lost you. We lost you.
Got a few words.
Hey!
It was like one of those crazy movies where people do that to try to get off the phone.
Yeah, right. Maka, do you want me to jump in there?
Yes, please.
You might want to, Sarahzin.
All right, sounds good. So typically,
Yes, please.
we say it's around 6 months after. I've seen it be a little bit sooner. I've seen it be longer as well. So 6 months, give or take 3 months. Let's just say that, right, for a capability to be put into place. It took us around that time frame to make sure that we had the ability to create the USB device groups that Windows had been doing for a bit. We added that into the overall Mac OS functionality. It was in public preview. Also to be able to do some of the restrictive actions overall with like auditing and block with override. So I wouldn't say that it's behind. It is always going to be, we release a new one and it'll be shortly after with Mac, right? However, I know that some of our competitors do have this, I guess, condition. If there's a Mac update that comes into place, that the existing policies will automatically have to be reinitiated back into those devices. which is not the case with ours. And the reason being, we're using Defender for Endpoint, like we were mentioning a little bit ago, and that is automatically maintaining that update within those devices. And when we have these updates going into the place, because we don't have something that's already installed on the devices, in the case of like having that the cloud ability there, it's going to be, I don't want to say seamless because there's always some issues, but nearly seamless of an update that goes through once those updates are made to that product. And it'll be rolling down to the customer depending on what channel they're on. But it's typically within 6 months, and it's just we try it out with our own product first. So if something doesn't work, at least when it's on Mac, it's already been tried through, at least on the Windows side.
Okay. Yeah, makes sense. Yeah. Yeah, it seems like since like Andrea said, she and I don't really dwell on that side anymore. When you look down and look back up, the security and compliance is just making all these strides, right? And you just see these things, and it's not a half. You don't half-ass do it. Either you live in that world or you do not, right?
Yep.
And so, and I was talking to Nancy and talking to Ingrid and Natalie. Big shout out to them. Come back on the show, everyone. They were the security, and compliance GBBs at Microsoft, and they're really deep and to understand that. I was sitting on one of the calls. I was lost within 10 minutes. I'm like, no idea what you're talking about, right? So within this, I assume that this is just an extension of the capability around, the information types and everything. How are you adding more? Do you see more, PII, PHI, sensitive label, other than the de facto? When was the last time someone added something that's similar to like a SSN or passport number? How do you guys integrate that in? And I think that question, so if you guys see me looking down, people are asking me questions on my phone because they can't log into the chat. That's why I can't do it. What about non-traditional sensitivity stuff like, the secret part number for the transversal space engine that comes in?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, that sort of stuff's always going to happen, right? We will do our best to come up with the standard sensitive information types that we believe are going to be needed throughout the majority of customers throughout the world. So your passport numbers, your SSNs, your bank account numbers, your SWIFT codes, stuff like that. And those are easy because they're well known and we can just program them into the system. But you're right. What happens when I've got a secret part number that's relevant only to me? Well, that's where we have the custom sensitive information type, allowing us to build our own sensitive information types using things like functions, regular expressions, using fingerprint technology to be able to, for instance, look at a form, and also using AI. Got to use AI, right? Got to use those two letters in our trainable classifiers capability that allows you to point our system to a repository of documents that represent contextually some stuff that's relevant to you, maybe mergers and acquisitions, maybe design documents and stuff like that, and have it reason over them and start learning what it thinks is going to be one of those documents when it finds it. So a system that's not able to extend past that repository of baseline stuff that the vendors built is one that's never going to succeed. If you can't build your own and we can't give you the capabilities to reliably do that, then quite frankly, we don't deserve to be in the market. So we have plenty of those capabilities in DLP right now for you to be able to define and use that stuff for sure. Obviously, there are certain licensing nuances around it. For instance, I think trainable classifiers requires E5, but fundamentally, we do give you that ability to go and define your own types of information and actually utilize those as well.
And then, Mac, I was going to add to that. So about a year and a half ago, I had a French customer, right? And they were using the French driver's license built in out of the box. And it was constantly firing with false positives. And there's no way, I mean, here's the other thing. The customer actually used real licenses to test it out. And they were all negative. And then they used fake ones. And they were all... It was just not working the way that it should be working, right? Which you shouldn't be doing. You shouldn't be using real data in that case to test it out, especially in a test environment itself, just as a disclaimer there. But that feedback was something that we took back, and they released some changes to quite a few of the built-in information types, including some of those French information types, which then drastically improved the actual true positives and decreased the false positives there too. So even if it's not a customer information type, if it's something out of the box that's not functioning well, that feedback that you give within your system, within testing, or just overall within the portal itself is something that the team is listening to. Yeah, it does take a bit of time. It did take quite a bit of time to get those changes in, but it is helping to improve what we're offering and sending it back to the customers in their environments as well. And so that was one thing that I thought was pretty cool, because I actually saw the frustration on my customer side. And once it was built into the system, then they ended up using EDM to help kind of eliminate some of those false positives too. But to be able to just kind of use out of the box, it was something that they were really appreciative. And I thought it was cool that it actually, it's not every day you see it, issue from a customer be fully resolved from our side in that lifespan.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
So we had one other question.
Similar issues.
Okay.
I'm sorry, what was that?
Yeah, sorry, I just wanted to throw another anecdote out there if I could be heard.
Yeah.
Yeah, we can hear you.
Yeah, cool. We had a similar situation with false positives, and they do happen, right? Because things change when it comes to these numbers, and we won't necessarily know about them until they're pointed out to us. We have a thing in Australia called the tax file number that everyone has, similar to an SSN style scenario, and unfortunately, the same.
Oh, Macro, we're losing you.
Here's that Trevor. Oh, here's that Trevor comment. Sputnik needs an upgrade.
He's dying.
On mobile phone numbers.
I didn't hear anything you just said.
On mobile phone numbers, that's all I heard.
So let's jump to Trevor had a question, and I think this is great because it's kind of looking at recommendations that we have from data governments for Purview. This is from Trevor, Edward's favorite audience member. Do you feel that the 5 deep parent label construct for the data classification framework as the de facto Microsoft recommendation, or what's the Microsoft recommendation for that potentially?
So the 5D parent label construct that we have, especially the ones that come right out of the box right there, right? I would say that it's a good starting point if you already don't have something set up in your environment. And I've had customers where they had nothing, and that's the construct that they ended up using. And it made sense because we have all these supporting tools that help them with, like, okay, if it's, say, highly confidential, all employees or external, like there's certain like tools that we can give to those customers where they don't have to do, I don't want to say any work, but they don't really have to think outside into their environment. They can just implement it into their environment because they don't have anything already in place. But most of the time, most of the customers already have certain things that they need protected, and they need to follow a naming convention and a labeling structure in their environment that is specific to that customer itself. So we say that it's a good starting point. It's a good recommendation. If you don't already have requirements coming from within your org, and if you do have those requirements, it's a good way to look at these labeling construct in general. But it's not the end all guidance. It's just a good way to start and a good way of getting an idea of what has worked, what we have tested with some of the users, and just in general of how we can move forward if you're at a spot where you don't know how to move forward from too. So.
And so back to this, I would assume you can trial these features in here, because I noticed that even when can you trial these features inside your tenant without having to have the E5?
So there's a couple things here. The first thing is when you first go into the compliance portal, when you have Microsoft Purview in your environment, there are the labels you do have certain things out of the box that pop up in your environment. So it is automatically in your environment set up for you to kind of see. The automatic encryption, the automatic labeling, that is not turned on. That has to be per your licensing agreements, as well as just the users kind of going through. However, the one thing I'm gonna do a shameless plug here. So we do have a We do have something as an offering that we call Proof as a Concept as a Service, a podcast in our environment where it comes out of the box. It has all E5 capabilities. You have certain, if you do there's an instructor-led training version. There's one that's kind of more so of a self-paced version. Depending on what you do, you have this environment where you can test out everything without it impacting up your prod environment, because it's completely standalone and on its own, right? You can do things like auto labeling. You can do the test out encryption, kind of go in there and see the labeling schema itself. It's something that Maca, myself, and a couple other folks on the team were very proud of, because it's helped a lot of our customers to even make the final decision to actually take the overall I guess the jump into Microsoft Purview, as well as test out some of the capabilities that they are unable to do so because of certain red tape in their environment itself. So it covers things like DLP, MIP, inside risk management, how that works with the different alerts, how that works with just overall configuring any environment. The instructor-led training has GIT scenarios in it, the just-in-time, as well as OCR too. So these are some of these capabilities that we've talked about that we have already included in podcasts. We are internally discussing a way of getting Copilot involved into it as well. So if that, in addition to being part of the private preview program, if you are interested in testing out some of those capabilities too, that's something that we're looking to somehow incorporate in the future. We haven't really quite figured out how, but it is something that is on our roadmap to include for the podcast engagement itself.
You know what I just noticed? Anytime someone says the word Copilot, it like grabs my attention. I just look like right away. Why is that?
Not Andrew. She's like Copilot. Yes, that's what that's.
Yeah.
Copilot
Won't be
was
long. Andrea's going to hate that word.
Yeah,
The word for that is money. That's the word that always grabs my attention.
Money.
Yeah. Money. And you keep saying Copilot, and I might assume you're talking about Copilot for security, because
yes, that is correct,
Okay.
and that is my apologies with the naming convention there. So.
No.
That's interesting though too, because I think it's probably important for our audience, listeners, and the people watching in. Purview is going to provide some capability for both, right? So number one, Copilot for security, but then also the other side, the other Copilot stuff, right? Because don't we need data security for, what Copilot in Windows and Copilot for Edge and all that stuff?
So the new name that we're moving forward to is the Microsoft Copilot and Microsoft Purview. And that's what we're summarizing, everything that's, kind of integrated with the different parts of Purview. So whether it's the integration with inside risk management or DLP or MIP or, e-discovery or communication compliance, that naming convention is all going together and falling into the Microsoft Copilot and Microsoft Purview for that naming convention.
And that's a great segue as we get ready to wind up the show. This tips back into something I learned last week, that there was a KQL for Purview, right? So you just can't assume, that the Copilot is for that. So this Copilot for Purview, that's interesting, because I don't know if Andrew, you and Rod, I did not know that there was a separate KQL for what for Purview that was I guess talked about last week, but that's interesting. Copilot for security for Purview, or Copilot for Purview.
So, off the record, I've been finding that there's a Copilot variation in just about everything, right? On the record, there's a lot more to come. So
I think you got that. Yeah, I think you got that reversed. not everything's on the record because the world is hurting.
Yeah.
All right. But hey, that's been super interesting. I really appreciate both of you coming on the show to talk about this, because security and compliance have been one of the things that's, I guess, if say, hey, we don't talk about it enough. I guess I saw the resident expert is not on the call today, which is Brody. He's out playing in the snow. And keep doing the good stuff. I'm gonna keep watching the CCP stuff and see your webinars and everything. And thank you so much. If there are any, publicity or links or anything, just get it to Rod and we'll get it out. And Mecca, thank you for driving to Richard's terrain in Australia to take the call. Thank you, Sarah. It's and you're in California, right? San Fran.
I am, yes. So it is
Thank you.
71 degrees outside for me right now.
Woo.
And it's pretty, it's pretty sunny. That's the natural sunlight coming in. It's 2:57 p.m. So I have the really, I'm very, very spoiled with the weather here. So
Okay.
I did want
What-
to say on Monday, we are having a call on the CCP to talk a little bit more about some of the private preview features for Copilot. So if you are part of it, please join. I will be giving that presentation and different ways that you can get involved and different things you can test and use cases as well.
I'll be on the call.
And if you're not, join it, aka.ms/join CCP.
There you go.
And to our listeners,
Radio voice there.
to our listeners, supporters, watchers, same bat time, same back channel next week. Thank you for coming on. Everyone have a great rest of the day. Enjoy the natural sunlight. Use Purview.
Thank you.
Talk soon.
See ya.